Hello everyone, Lone Wolf here. Welcome to the 4th episode of the Chaos Report, the weekly or bi-weekly Path of Exile series that will focus on the economy of the Softcore Challenge League. In this episode, I'll be taking a quick look at our unique item watch list and we'll be covering different farming strategies and crafting strategies that you can employ to take advantage of the current build meta in League mechanics. As always, do keep in mind that these are educated guesses or predictions, and as such they might not be entirely accurate or work out for you. Furthermore, I might miss a thing or two that might seem obvious to many, and for that I apologize. It's hard to cover everything. In conclusion, invest at your own risk. With that disclaimer out of the way, let's jump right into it. As a first news segment, we'll be taking a quick peek at some of the most interesting currencies that you should keep an eye on. Of course, this wouldn't be a proper economy series if we didn't first look at the Chaos to Exalted Orb ratio. Currently, the Chaos to Exalted ratio is 153 Chaos Orbs per Exalted. The Exalted Orbs have seen a sudden and drastic rise just a little over 1 week ago, and have since been holding rather steady at the 155 Chaos mark. As there was no real circumstance apparent that led to this rise, such as a streamer doing anything in particular, it might be fair to call shenanigans on that rapid rise from the 22nd to the 25th. Caution is advised, as the Exalted Orbs might have gotten a 30C price bump from fixers. The Exalted Orbs, however, as always, will retain a large portion of their value for crafting purposes anyway. Especially in this multi-mod heavy meta, we could very well see these rise even further, similarly to the Synthesis League, where they topped out at about 175 Chaos and held steady at about 150. Another currency that has seen a huge rise in popularity, which no one should honestly be surprised about, is the good old Alteration Orb. In the past week, it has gone from a low point of 7.5 Alteration Orbs per Chaos to a staggering 5 alterations per Chaos, and it shows no signs of stopping either. This rise is easily explained by the overuse of the multi-mod crafting method, in which hundreds and thousands of alterations are used per item, to reroll as many times as necessary to get that 1 or 2 good mods that you really need. As Alteration Orbs are at such a high price, I would advise switching up your loot filter a tiny bit, to allow T2 jewelry rares, as they will be the most efficient slot alteration shard providers. Oftentimes you will not fill up your inventory while you're out and about, and this is the perfect time to pick up these additional items, which you should try to make a color that doesn't necessarily pop out at you, just so it doesn't distract you from the real loot. Doing this will give you about 3 to 4 Alteration Orbs per map, which can definitely be worthwhile if you're running 50 maps or so an hour. It's very easy change, and it can help both SSF players, hardcore, as well as your average softcore Legion farmers, of course. Similarly high in demand are Nomad Orbs, which are one of the currencies needed for the multi-mod crafting purpose. These puppies have also gone from about 12 Chaos each to upwards of 16 Chaos. As they are T1 currency, the best way to get these will likely to be just farming more maps. The Legion itself can drop these as a reward as well. Another great place to find them is in Delves, through the hidden opulence chests behind Fractured Walls, which will guarantee drop a T1 currency, one of which being the Nomad Orb. My last tip for farming these are the new Harbinger Sextants that are available on Journeyman and Master Cartographer's Sextants, which will spawn an additional Harbinger at the boss location, as well as allow Harbingers and the boss itself to drop additional currency shards. This is a huge opportunity to use Harbinger Scarabs on, as Harbingers will drop nearly twice as many shards as usual. Furthermore, maps that have multiple bosses, so for example maps that drop the 3 Voices divination card, are incredible to farm with this particular sextant, as each individual boss will drop these shards. Add the Twin Boss Prophecy or Map Mod on top, you got a shard stew going. With those 3 main currencies covered that are currently most prevalent and important, let's move on to our unique item watch list, which we refined last week, and see how those items have shaken out since then, as well as their potential trajectories in the future. Our watch list currently features 9 unique items, but we might add or remove a few during this video as well. First up, as per usual, our beloved jewels, Transcendence Flash and Tempered Flash. Since last week, not a lot has changed for the Transcendence Flash. It has since then leveled out at about 340 to 360 Chaos, and been rather steady at that price point. It is still one of the most used and most expensive jewels in the league, and it doesn't seem likely that this will change anytime soon. The Tempered Flash has seen very little change as well, still sitting at around 20 Chaos, falling off a bit in the last few days, but still being a very good choice for any Marauder or Duelist build to get that extra free 75% crit multiplier. Same reminder as last time, of course, if you are diligently running your temples, you might want to pick up a copy of the Tempered Flash, as well as the Vial of Transcendence for your T3 sacrifice rooms. This is way more of a worthwhile investment than throwing in your belts and hoping for the 1 in a million chance to get your beloved Headhunter. This is due to the price of the Vial of Transcendence, costing about 70 chaos right now, and the Tempered Flesh only running you about 20 chaos as well. You will easily make a 200-250 chaos profit for each time that you run this. I definitely recommend investing here. It's one of the easiest and fastest ways in the game to currently make a profit with such a large margin and such little time investment. Moving on to the Carcass Jack, we can see that our predictions from last week have been accurate. It has descended further into the lower 10 to 30 chaos area and has since leveled out at around 15 chaos as predicted. It still represents a very solid chess piece for people getting new characters up before they can craft their own Elder chess pieces, and especially Cyclone characters will love the additional AoE for the time being. However, as it gets heavily outshined in terms of DPS, survivability, and many other utilitarian factors by the crafted Elder armors, this one won't see another resurgence, I'm fairly certain. As such, we'll be removing the good old Carcass Jack from our watch list, as its life cycle in this league has likely ended. However, I'll of course keep you up to date with any unexpected changes. Rislatha's Coil, on the other hand, has followed our predictions from last week fairly accurately, staying at around 70 to 100 chaos for the longest time, and then dipping a bit lower in the last few days. This is likely due to more and more players trying to pick up more survivability options or something like a Headhunter for the 5 emblem farming, rather than trying to go for more damage, as many players have realized that the Legion mechanic, much like past leagues, poses absolutely zero challenge to any real builds in terms of required damage. Additionally, with more and more players returning to the mentioned farming strategy of last week that involves farming very low level maps, the damage this belt provides is simply not necessary for a lot of these players. We're still seeing prices upwards of an Exalted Orb for well-rolled ones, but that will likely change in the future if more people forgo the large damage upgrade over more utility options. Farming recommendations for this one are included in the previous episodes, and as such will not be repeated here. The TLDR, however, is this: farm the wretched Divination card. That's the only way to farm for it somewhat reliably. As a general trajectory, I would imagine this belt to slowly drop further, as the league mechanic really doesn't pose a challenge, especially with how many people are running it right now in lower level maps. Moving on to our absolute favorite flask, the Lion's Roar. This flask has seen a fantastic rise since the beginning of the league, thanks to the new melee meta. Of course, we've also seen last week already that it was struggling a bit to keep its number 1 or number 2 spot on the ladder, and this has manifested itself this week, as it now firmly shares its number 3 spot with the Taste of Hate. It has reached a rather steady plateau at roughly 40C for the last few days, and will likely stick around this area for the next little while. A perfectly rolled Lion's Roar, of course, still goes for about 80 to 100 chaos. As for farming strategies, the same as last week still apply. You'll be looking for the Earthdrinker Divination card in primarily Dunes, Desert, and Desert Spring maps. I still think this is a valuable farming strategy, as the Div card itself is fairly common. You'll easily be able to obtain multiple per map at average if you properly invest in them. The Paradoxica has been following each and every one of our predictions so far, and has also not disappointed this week. As predicted, the astronomical prices from last week were not sustainable, and as such, the weapon has dropped by about 100 chaos and is projecting a further drop in the near future. It is still one of the best weapons for some of the new Ascendancies, such as the Berserker and Slayer, and many builds those Ascendancies like to run. Additionally, it is still a very valuable weapon for other, more niche builds as well, which might not be entirely meta right now, such as the hard-stacking elemental builds. For farming, the same rules still apply. The only way to obtain it is by interacting with the Immortal Syndicate. One additional piece of advice on farming it, however, aside from last week's advice, that seems to have skipped many people's minds, is that Katarina, the mastermind of the Immortal Syndicate, drops a guaranteed Betrayal unique on kill. As such, hard farming her is the best way to obtain the Paradoxica, and can also net the Cinder Swallow Urn, which has some very popular crafts, as well as being the second most expensive flask in the game. While farming the Mastermind has never really been a lucrative option necessarily, I would imagine it could be now for some players, as most players refuse to, quote-unquote, destroy their Betrayal board, and as such, both the Paradoxica as well as the Cinder Swallow will likely retain a decent amount of value for quite some time. For crafting advice on the Paradoxica, always prioritize physical damage increases as well as attack speed. As for future prices, I would imagine the Paradoxica will continue to drop a little bit, but I'll hold strong on my previous prediction, that it will not fall below the 100 to 150 chaos mark. It'll likely remain a strong contender for the remainder of the league. The Hemophilia Gloves are seeing their last in this series today, as they have seen no notable changes since last week. They have been remaining steady at the bottom 3 chaos mark, despite GGG finally fixing the on-death effects. Unfortunately, this is one of those cases where it was too little, too late. The Hemophilia Gloves have died quite shortly after the start, and even I have finally lost hope that they'll see a resurgence. They'll be removed from the watch list, just as they have been removed from all of our characters' builds and hearts. Rest in peace, sweet prince. Moving on to the Calm's Heart body armor. Having dropped a few pounds in the last few days, it still remains as one of the most expensive chess pieces in the entire game at a very solid 290-280 chaos price point. It is currently on a bit of a downward slope, but that is to be expected, coming from its absolutely astronomical high price point of over 350 chaos each. Such a high price point for a unique body armor is very hard to sustain, as people can always start target farming it. As we talked about last week, the huge popularity, and with it the price, comes from all the two-handed weapon users, as they do not require the 6-link in the chest armor to function properly. This particular item has been my personal farming target, and has been providing me with quite some income in the last week. I have opted to move my personal Elder map setup to Volcano, one of only 2 maps in the game that offers not 1 but 2 of the Calm's Heart divination cards. It has been providing me with a steady amount of income, despite my low playtime this week in particular. I've decided to sell the Pride and the Fall for its increased price per card, and its lower drop rate, and have been saving up the King's Heart card until I get a completed set. This method has been sustaining me with a very solid currency influx, in addition to all the other drops that a T16 Volcano provides, of course. Definitely still a worthwhile investment to farm this one, as the Calm's Heart will likely retain a decent percentage of its value, barring any unforeseen circumstances, throughout the entire league. The last item on our watch list is, of course, the Nomad studded belt. This belt has seen a slight drop in price, but it is still holding itself very much above the flock of most other belts. As stated last week, this is likely due to the addition of the new Spectral Throw duo, Divide and Conquer, which finally makes Spectral Shield Throw a very valuable physical-based projectile ability that has seen quite a lot of play in the recent little while. With the popularity of impel-based builds, both melee and ranged, this belt, for good reasons, is still one of the most popular in the current league and will likely remain so for a little while longer at the very least, as it is very hard to replace this belt both in terms of its unique ability portfolio, which specifically offers a decent amount of defenses, as well as its large amount of offense. The only way to acquire this item is still through the Grand Leader of the North prophecy. As such, if you intend to farm this one, you'll have to permaspam prophecies until you hit it, unfortunately. I have personally acquired one of these belts, through the prophecy, last week, as I randomly rolled into it during my normal prophecy rolling for my maps. Remember from my last week's side note as well, always have prophecies active, and constantly roll new ones when old ones get triggered. This right here is a perfect example, as it gave me an easy 40 plus chaos profit. Future trajectories for this one will depend entirely upon the player base's willingness to play something that isn't Cyclone, which right now seems to be quite difficult to do, to be honest. As such, I'm advising caution with investment into this item until we get a more clear picture of how the meta will settle this league. Now moving on to our third segment for this video, the good old meta analysis. As pretty much everybody expected, we see that the majority of players are still playing Slayer and Trickster at a respective 42 and 20% each. Cyclone is still the most used skill, with a usage stat of 48% of players above level 95, and ED Contagion plus Blight being used by a combined 103% of all Tricksters. Wait a minute, Luna, you might say? The 103% here indicate that many Tricksters are doubling up on that particular pairing, so they'll have both a 6-link setup for Essence Drain, as well as a 6-link setup for Blight. Overall, there have been barely any changes since last week. However, the Ascendant has seen a small bump in popularity, as more and more players are getting enough raw currency to make Scion builds work. As GGG has recently fixed the on-death triggers regarding the Legion League mechanic, we might see a slight rise in things such as the Gladiator Ascendancy. However, that might be a similar case to the Hemophilia Gloves, where players are simply not going to bother trying out the Ascendancy again, as they've tasted the power of Berserker, Slayer, and Trickster, and don't want to give up that sweet, sweet feeling of being overpowered. As for the Atlas analysis, most of the recommendations from the first 3 weeks still apply, as the meta hasn't seen any changes whatsoever, and as such, I won't be repeating them here. Feel free to check out the last few episodes for those. With that out of the way, I'll be focusing on the new dominant high-level Atlas strategy for this league, Shaper Strongholds. Now, Shaper Strongholds are of course nothing new. They've existed since 3.4, aka the start of Delve League, and have been a good source of sextants, chisels, and harbinger-related currency ever since their original implementation. This is, however, not what they're used for in this league. This league, many players have realized that killing the boss of an Elder T16 map, on which this strategy is mostly used, does not drop the correct level of map, as it doesn't take the Eldering into account. For example, a T2 map boss, even if Eldered, will drop maps like it's a T2 map. As such, this new strategy has seen a large popularity, in which you place the Shaper Stronghold on your Elder T16 map to get permanent Shaper influence without having to deal with the hassle of Elder Shaper ping pong and the extremely annoying mechanics those entail. Especially on maps such as Volcano, which is my current farming map, that only has 2 connections, Elder Shaper ping pong strategies are very unreliable, as it's hard to perpetually keep both Shaper and Elder connected to it so it can properly ping pong. With the Shaper Stronghold strat, however, all you have to do to sustain your influence is to not kill the map boss, which proves very easy on a map such as Volcano, as the boss is in his own little hidey hole behind a wall, so there's a very low chance to accidentally off him. This will not only allow you to keep a permanent Shaper influence, and thus the additional Shaper mobs that get spawned by the portals, but it will also allow you to move your Elder Shaper ping pong to your shaped T15 of choice, if you are using a shaped Atlas. Due to the ease of sustaining this strategy, which involves basically no work after the initial setup, it has proven itself to be the best high-level farming strategy in the current league. The sheer amount of additional mobs that it spawns, especially paired with something like Beyond Zana mods or Sextants, is absolutely worth the effort to set this strategy up on your map. I'm not entirely sure if it's worth spending the time and effort to get this set up on a lower level map, however, so you guys will have to make your own judgment call on that. The one downside this strategy has, of course, is that you cannot drop any Shaper or Elder influenced items in the maps you're currently running. As there aren't any incredibly amazing Spiked Gloves or Steel Ring maps on the Atlas right now though, however, I feel like this is a small price to pay for being able to indefinitely run your chosen map with no further setup required. This works incredibly well for divination card specific farming. As for how to spawn it, it's somewhat random. A Shaper Stronghold can spawn on any Shaper or Elder area that is next to the other's influence, as it has to spawn on a naturally spread Shaper influence. For example, if you want Volcano to be your Shaper Stronghold, you need to spread the Elder influence to Precinct, so Volcano naturally gets the Shaper influence, which will start happening after you have at least 7 consecutive Elder influenced maps. You cannot get a Shaper Stronghold on a Shaper forced map. So if you run Precinct afterwards to Elder Shaper ping pong it, for example, Precinct will not be able to be a Shaper Stronghold, as you forced the Shaper influence to spawn on it by running the Elder version of it. Keep clearing the Shaper Strongholds and keep the edge of your Elder Shaper ping pong on your chosen map, and after a few hours of doing this, it will eventually spawn on your given map. I got lucky and just got it randomly on my Volcano. Now, for the last little segment, I always like to give some quick farming and or crafting tips for some lower econ players. First up, farming the Delve areas is still extremely profitable, just like last week. Especially with the Gilded Sulfite Scarabs prices being the lowest they have ever been, it is extremely easy to get to decent depths and farm whatever areas you want to farm. I would highly recommend the Frozen Hollows as well as the Fungal Caverns. The first dropping an assortment of serrated and prismatic fossils, the second dropping perfect and corrodeds. These are some of the most common yet high value fossils, and as such should be fairly easy to acquire for anybody, regardless of depth and luck. Also, always keep in mind to save them up for a small while, until you have a bulk of 4 or more fossils to sell. This will allow you to ask for even higher prices when you offer them for sale. As an example, I oftentimes sell 5 serrated fossils as a single stack for over 150 chaos, despite their current value only being around 20 chaos. Using Vorici's T3 Research Craft on 3 socketed prismatic edges can net upwards of 3 to 4 Exalted Orbs if you hit all 3 white sockets. Specifically, Psychon players are currently fighting for these things, as it is by far the highest range weapon in the game with 3 white sockets. Definitely easy to acquire the bases for it, and the profit margin is enormous. However, it is RNG gated, as you can get 1 to 3 white sockets. getting all 3 isn't guaranteed, even on a level 3 Varici. Crafting eye level 86 plus Colossal Tower Shields for highest possible armor value is another worthwhile endeavor that doesn't cost you a leg and a half. Right now, dense fossils go for about 1 chaos each, and those are the only ones you require to properly craft a high armor tower shield. The base itself you can get for around 5 to 6 chaos as well. Try to aim for 2,500 armor with your crafts and rolls, which shouldn't take too many tries, of course RNG applies, and will net you about 100 chaos plus for every well-rolled shield. Shields that reach above 3,000 armor will sell for a dozen or more Exalted Orbs. However, those are obviously very rare. The opportunity cost for this is fairly low, so I'd recommend trying it out a few times and seeing if you might get lucky or if you enjoy this kind of crafting. And with that last segment wrapped up, I'll be ending this week's Chaos Report. I hope this video was informative and you learned something from it that you can apply to your own game. Please let me know if I missed anything or you would have wanted me to talk about anything in specific that I might not have covered. Also let me know what your personal predictions are going to be for these coming weeks. I always love reading those in the comments. Furthermore, let me know if you would like to see me cover a particular topic regarding Path of Exile. I'm always willing to explore new video types or add extra segments to this series. Lastly, give me some feedback on this new series. How did you enjoy it? Was this video too long? Should I cut a specific part? Etc, etc. And of course, don't forget to subscribe. Hit the bell thingamajig, notification, whatever that thing's called. Like, dislike the video, and check me out over on twitch.tv/LunarWolf. You can find a link to my stream down below in the description as well. And with that, thanks for watching, and keep farming those Exalts.